Hey, welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Brodinski, and sharing that split screen with me is Kristi Doerr, formerly a candidate for the Wallingford Town Council. We'll explain that in a second, but Kristi, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so formerly a candidate, what does that mean? Well, you ran for town council as a Democrat, of course. You got over 6,500 votes. Really good for the circumstances, that surrounded your entry into the campaign. So I wanted to invite you on and have kind of a freewheeling, blunt debrief on this campaign and break it down in its component parts and get your thoughts, not as a representative of the Democratic Party or anything like that, but just your own personal thoughts. You up for that? You ready to take a few swings?
Let's do it.
All right. Just to set the table, get the context down, I want to get the results up on the screen. I think everyone who watches the shows knows what they are. But it'd be useful to do that again. And the first screen the first JPEG I'm going to put up on the screen are the council results. They should be up there now. The Republicans are in red, obviously. The Democratic councilors or candidates are in blue, and it goes all the way down. Kristi, I don't know what you see in this, but what I see is a lot of red on the top of the list. Well, you were there when these numbers came in. Just what are your thoughts on the results? Looking at the raw numbers.
Yeah, unfortunately, I am also seeing a lot of red. Looking at the results, I mean, the numbers are high. This was a historic election, and it's pretty impressive the increases from last year, or 2 years ago, excuse me, to this year. People really came out to vote, and yeah, the numbers are great. And unfortunately, yes, it is very red, but is what it is at this point.
Yeah, it is. As they say, the voters have spoken.
Yeah.
So again, looking at these numbers, Christina Tata, obviously runs away with it. A very impressive victory. She kind of controls the board over the last every election that she's run. Almost about a 2,500 vote spread between the first place winner and the last place winner, and there seemed to be kind of three tiers. Christina Tata is, by herself up there, over 8,000, and everyone whose vote total has a 7 is sort of the second tier. They're kind of closely bunched. Mm-hmm. And then everyone who begins with a 6 is kind of the third tier. You're down there at, I shouldn't say down there, you're up there at 6,510 votes. It's so close. I mean, really close.
First loser, as I would say.
Yeah. Want to change to another image that I prepared for the show, and this is the turnout comparison. The last cycle, 2021, and this year, 2023. And the numbers are up there, and total turnout increased by almost 1,600 voters, and a 14,614 vote turnout is really heavy comparatively. You got any theories as to why that was?
Well, I don't know if you had heard, but we have a new mayor for the first time in 40 years. So I think that might have had something to do with it. That, in addition to obviously the 2 versus 1 schools, that has been a huge issue, at least in the circles I've seen online. And it really brought a lot of people out for the vote.
Yeah. The last image or next to the last image I want to put up is the mayoral race results. Riley OConnell, 6,698, and Vinnie Cervoni, $1,000. 1,000 votes more. And did that shock the room on election night when you were with the Democrats counting the votes as they came in?
Yeah, I think it did.
Yeah. When we look at the turnout and the mayoral results, it seems like the additional turnout broke for Vinnie Cervoni roughly 2-1. Is that how you saw it also? That the extra turnout kind of helped Vinnie Cervoni?
Yeah, no, it appears that way. The focus on our campaigns over the course of the election was really voter turnout and trying to get that win number up. And I think we felt pretty confident at that night coming in, and when the results came in, it was a bit of a shock and disappointment for sure.
So the broad questions that I want to sort of attack in this episode is the biggest picture possible. I don't want to necessarily relitigate all the issues, but if we need to get into it, we can. But I want to lead off with a little story that happened to me back in 2003 when I was running for mayor. And in sort of in the middle of the campaign, I got a call from a public official, names don't matter. And that public official, it was a friendly call, said a survey just came out and it had to do with the plan of conservation and development. And there was a question presented to voters. It was something like, are you satisfied living in Wallingford? Or are you happy living in Wallingford? Or something close to that. I don't remember the exact wording. Like, do you like life in Wallingford? And it was reported to me that that question was answered something like, again, I don't remember the specifics, 85% said yes. And that individual, an experienced in politics, didn't have to say any more. I didn't have to ask anymore. And I kind of knew the writing was on the wall. That was probably September or October where the survey came out. And so are the voters saying, the old adage is, the voters have spoken and, I've got to listen. Is the big picture here that voters are generally happy and satisfied living in Wallingford, and they're not going to punish the party in power if things are going reasonably well? Is that part of the story?
I'm not sure if that's part of the story. I think everybody knew we were going to have a new mayor. And I think from both sides, I've seen a list of things that people aren't happy with. I think if we ask that question to voters now, I don't think we'd be near 85%. But I think there's an understanding that regardless if Riley or Vinnie won, that these issues are going to be addressed in some fashion. Some of the issues Riley was addressing was different than Mr. Cervoni, but regardless, the era of Dickinson would be over, and we would get some upgrades, possibly some technology in town hall, fixing some infrastructure, things like that. That's on everybody's list of what needs to be worked on in Wallingford.
I want to go back to your role in this campaign because you came into it in it's sort of a unique way. Start from the beginning. How did you get mixed up in this? How did they ensnare you? What happened? Yeah.
Well, I've been involved with the DTC for quite a while now, and I'm actually one of the officers, and as the treasurer. And so I've been heavily involved in the election the last couple cycles, and was actually considering running for town council early this year. It's something, that piqued my interest, something I think I'd be good at. And when the endorsements came around this summer, just wasn't the right time for me. I was closing a family business. In addition, we had more than 6 candidates vying for the endorsement, and including Jesse Reynolds, who I stepped in and became his treasurer. So, it just didn't feel like the right time. As we moved closer to the election, I started regretting that a little bit. And when the opportunity arose, I just said, this is the moment. The business is closed. The stars are aligning, and let me throw my hat in the ring.
But But you got in late. You got in late. Would you take us through how that happened?
Well, we had a candidate that had to withdraw. Pretty much on the last day, you could actually withdraw from the election before the ballots were printed. And we had held a special meeting that was on a Friday, September 23rd. And then on the 25th, we held a special meeting to do an endorsement. And I had put my name in and got the endorsement. And on that Monday, the 25th, I filed my paperwork and got going.
Would it be true that everyone else, Republicans and Democrats had a head start on you because you didn't have stuff organized necessarily? I mean, right? I mean, didn't they all have 10 paces on you right from the go?
They did, but I'm pretty quick.
Okay.
By the end of Sunday, I had my paperwork completed. I dropped it off at town hall, had signs ordered, and I have a very good support team, and we got rolling real quick.
So I've read something about you, and one of the things you featured in the campaign and in the campaign literature is that you have a credential. I'm not sure we've seen on the town council before, a CPA, certified public accountant. So I said, well, we don't need accountants and lawyers. We don't need that type. We need other kind of people. So why did you feature CPA in your campaign literature?
Oh, Mike, you should be careful. The CPAs will always get you. We know where the bodies are buried.
Yeah, right.
So I've been a CPA for 15 years now, in the business for over 20, and I know budgets. I know how numbers work. I've taken governmental accounting. I know how budgets and how we go over budget in government accounting. Constantly we're asking for more money, and why are we doing this? And I think we have enough lawyers. We definitely have enough lawyers on the council.
Surplus.
Yes, and I think a financial perspective is something that would be of value to the council and to the community.
Craig, I apologize. Just pulling your leg. We got rid of one lawyer. He's now in the mayor's office. Anyway, we'll move on to that. Well, does this mean that you and the comptroller during the budget season that you're going to go toe to toe, or not necessarily? How does a CPA sort of practically fit into, the budget process that starts pretty quick? If you had been elected.
If I had been elected, I think, as a new counselor, I would have had a leg up in getting, my head around all the budgets.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of information. I work on the Wallingford Library Board preparing the budget, so I am familiar with that process from the other side. So I know how it comes together. I can see big picture. It's what I do on a daily basis. And I think I'd be able to ask good questions, skip over some of the nonsensical questions of what is this, when it's, I would understand a little easier what some of the items are. And I understand what it takes to run a business. Some things are over budget, some things are under. You can't predict. If we had a crystal ball, we'd all be millionaires because we would know what's going to happen. But we don't. And I know how things give and take and how you move forward and keep the ship going.
So why do I ask you this? You lost the election. You're not on the council. You're not going to be able to do any of that. But I guess the ultimate question is, are you there in the wings, sort of, going to be watching this budget process and weighing in from time to time? Or are you sort of leaving the scene,
No, you have not gotten rid of me. That's for sure.
Okay.
No, I do try to attend town council meetings and participate. Due to my scheduling, sometimes I have to watch remotely and yell at the TV at home. But I do stay up to date and plan to continue that.
Let's talk about this campaign, this election, and get a little more specific. And again, the broad view from 10,000 feet. It seemed as though. Or was it a question of experience versus inexperience? And it was really that simple, that if voters, not 85%, but if a lot of voters said we're kind of happy in Wallingford, things aren't terrible, that's kind of a lower bar than what I suggested earlier, but things aren't terrible. We have an experienced guy, inexperienced guy. Was that it? Was that really the deciding question, do you think?
we're a little early to really make that decision, but I think it might have been. It when you get to know Riley, you understand he's he's a very smart, intelligent, forward-thinking man. But he didn't get to meet everybody. And I think the messaging of he's inexperienced, he doesn't know what he's doing, it really, he couldn't get out and prove that that was incorrect to that many voters. So I think the messaging was really strong there, and that probably had a good impact on the election.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that this issue, or the quality of experience was more powerful than maybe the Democrats thought, that Riley OConnell thought, that as more voters turned out, more of them weighed in on that, on that issue. Are we sort of seeing eye to eye on that?
I mean, I think that's part of it. I think that there's a lot of voters that, would just take experience and say it's not that bad. Let's continue to move forward. That's not a great place to be if that's not that bad.
Yeah.
But I think the messaging from the Republican side was good. I think there are some things that I'm concerned about with Mayor-elect Cervoni, and the votes he's had and the direction he plans to take the town. But I don't know that, his plans really were the message. It was, don't vote for Riley because he's inexperienced. Go with me because I'm experienced. So
I want to pick out another issue in the campaign, toss it over to your side of the table and see what you think. And that has to do with taxes. It seems like forever, Democrats have been running on the issue of taxes, and year after year, they lose. Taxes seems to be the mayor's issue, not the Democrats' issue, yet Democrats keep pounding away. And the Republicans are happy to say, well, we have the lowest mill rate of the surrounding towns, that kind of thing. We can get into the merits of that argument if you want. I'm just saying it doesn't seem to work. Your thoughts on what I just said?
I think you're right. It doesn't seem to work. People are very happy with the mill rate. My opinion, we're not getting enough for our dollars. I do a refund from town hall. I don't think that we have historically been spending our dollars wisely. And I think, while it's not that much coming out of our pockets, compared to like our neighbor in Hamden, we're not getting what we need. We don't have a town pool anymore. We don't have paved sidewalks and roads. Our schools are falling apart. People are happy because it's not impacting their pockets right now. But I think they're missing that, we're not getting as much as I think we should.
I guess my point, and I want to be the devil's advocate, I often play the role as a devil's advocate. The Democrats have had their chance at this for 10, 15, even 20 years. They've had their chance at this issue, and voters just do not feel they're unfairly taxed or overtaxed. So if I was a Democratic strategist and you're paying me $500 an hour, I'd say, kind of move on, make that your fifth bullet point and not your first. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, you're any change, do you think, in the Democratic strategy going forward, or is it still going to be you're overtaxed?
I think it's a consideration. I think there's so much to unpack from this election that just passed. And we're gonna, Riley announced today that he will not be running again. We're gonna have to figure out, what our direction is, and based on the numbers, see where we go.
Changing topics on you here. Community pool, was brought up time and time again. And that was one of the, I think, clearer distinctions between the Democratic side of the aisle and the Republican side of the aisle. Oh, there's a lot of blurring, there's a lot of overlap. But it seemed like Mayor-elect Cervoni was cooler to the idea of spending on community pool than Riley OConnell. Okay, you look at the vote totals, and it didn't seem like community pool was a deal breaker for Cervoni. It didn't seem to gain traction based on the election results. And one more thing I'll throw out before I again push it over to your side of the table. I think in 2024, the issue is going to be over either. The bids are going to go out the bids are going to go out first quarter. We have Vinnie Cervone's promise on that. It may end up in the council's lap. The result there is very questionable, I think. And if the council votes this price down, we don't know what the bid is going to be. It could be 10,000, 12,000, 14,000. We just don't know. But that's going to be the moment of truth forever. The council, if the council doesn't approve it, it's just dead as an issue. And then the Democrats have one less thing to run on in 2025. Your thoughts on what I just said?
Yeah, that was a lot. And I think you might have been being generous, with Mr. Cervone's take on the pool. I think it was an election issue. I think it came out, he voted against the pool several times. But it seems like this year with an election, everybody seemed open to a pool now, or a possibility, but that'll be 2024's issue. Every door I talked to, people would ask, obviously about the schools, but number two question was about the community pool. And people I talked to, they wanted the pool, whether we use it or not. But I do think that Mr. Cervone's stance, as the election moved on, in his promises, I think it took that out of the election equation a little bit.
Changing topics again, you mentioned it earlier, and I think you nailed it pretty well. But the first one I want to address is technology. When I interviewed Vinnie Cervone on an earlier episode, I suggested to him that he and Riley OConnell were basically in the same spot on technology. Both want upgrades. The specifics, the price, the funding, that can be discussed later. But it seems like progress is going to be made under the Cervone administration, and I would say satisfactory progress, so that this is no longer an issue in 2025. Your thoughts?
I will say, it's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed in town hall. I think there's some hesitation when you say technology. People automatically assume it's going to cost a lot and we're going to let go of people. I see technology as a way to improve efficiencies and utilize people differently in better ways, improve our process. There's a lot of work beyond technology that needs to be done at town hall. And I'm hopeful Mr. Cervone sees that and can make some progress. I'm optimistic with the election of someone like Chris Regan with a technology background, that there'll be support from the council for those kind of changes.
Another issue that came up, when people call it infrastructure, I really don't know what that means, but I guess it's roads, bridges, buildings, grounds, hard assets, that kind of thing. It seems as though both the Democrats and the Republicans wanted the same thing. Again, there's differences around the margins, maybe, emphasis, urgency, the hit list of projects to be done, maybe that, subject to further discussion. But I sense, and this is going to be a question to you, I sense that Mayor Cervone is going to do enough on infrastructure to take that out as an issue for 2025. Your thoughts?
I hope so. That's an area I'm not too certain on, just based on his votes with the Building and Maintenance Committee. And those items cost money. They really do. And so I'm not certain how far we're going to get under Cervone administration. I'm always an optimist. I would love to see these changes and then this to not be an issue in 2025, but we'll see.
Another topic that came up and was pounded very hard by the O'Connell campaign was the issue of ethics, conflict of interest. We're not going to review, everything that happened. I think people watching the show know generally what I'm talking about. It started with a vote, which probably no one thought was going to be controversial, but ended up being very controversial. Vinnie Cervone voted, along with other councilors, to settle a routine tax appeal. That tax appeal was brought by one of his campaign contributors, and not just a $50 contributor, not a $25 fundraiser. It was two people that gave $2,000. And as it came out, people thought he should have recused himself. Let me just give you one more thread. I'm going to turn it over to you. And I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. The code of ethics is rather specific, and it is written down. It's not a vague value, or a vague aspirational good thing. It's very specific. It's written in a specific way. And politicians have a right to rely on the written word. And if you comply with the written word, that's a safe harbor. Not to say you can't be criticized for, judgment or other things, but to say or to allege that it was a breach of the code of ethics was put to bed by the Ethics Commission, which looked at this issue and dismissed a complaint alleging a conflict of interest, dismissed it as baseless. Your thoughts on what I just said, and just the impact of that issue on the campaign, and maybe your personal review of whether this should have been brought up the way it was.
Sure. Yeah, this was a big issue, obviously, in the campaign. As a CPA, we're taught independence in fact and appearance, and there may be cases where letter of the law, you are not doing something illegal, but just because you can do it doesn't always mean you should do it. And I think we've found in both of the public ethics violations and hearings we've had this year, there's this town council, there's a lot of people on it that know other people. We are a small town, and it's very hard for every council member to be independent of who's coming before the council asking for money, tax relief. But I think we have to hold our elected officials accountable for knowing when they should step aside. I personally think that the better choice would have been for Mr. Cervoni to recuse himself. Obviously, the argument was made that it wouldn't result in a different answer, but the ends can't justify the means. I think we need transparency in town hall, in town council. We need to hold people accountable, and we need to know that they're doing the right thing and making smart, ethical decisions. And I am somewhat pleased, the results of the Xandre ethics trial is that they will be taking a training. So I hope that will lead us in the right direction going forward.
But the argument you made, we'll get to the Jason Xandre thing in a second, because viewers may not be up to speed on that, and we kind of jumped into the middle of that issue. But the position that you very persuasively described on the Cervoni vote didn't move the voters. I mean, the turnout, Cervoni won despite a very aggressive, I would say overly aggressive campaign, by Riley OConnell. It didn't move the needle. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm not a campaign consultant, but I think it was aggressive, and I think it might have overreached to a point where it was brushed off as ridiculous. I had a neighbor say to me the other day, if more people knew about that, I don't think they would have voted for Cervoni, but that they didn't feel that the substance of the matter really got out, versus the messaging that went out was just a little bit too aggressive, too outlandish, too sensational, and it really buried the story of what happened. I mean, we can get into a little bit further, and I probably later will, but we talk about a donation of $2,000 towards the Cervoni campaign. That family, that business has given over $2,000, close to, I think, at least $7,000 between the campaign committee and the PAC. So we need to know who's putting their money into politics. This is happening in Washington all the time. It's we don't want a George Santos in our town. We need to be clear and transparent, and that's the accountant in me, understanding where the money's coming from and who's supporting who.
Are you arguing now for a change in the code of ethics?
I'm not making that argument now, or that statement.
Okay, because as I said just a couple of seconds ago, it is indisputable Cervoni complied with the code of ethics. He's still receiving a lot of incoming, from Democratic activists and the O'Connell camp. And you say, but he complied with the code of ethics. It just gets the Democrats mad. Well, how could that be? And you've explained the position, I think. But there's this other side, and my role as a host of Citizen Bike Show is to get that out there and see what you have to say about it.
I understand that, and I think I don't know the code of ethics word for word. I'm not a lawyer. We've made that clear. But I think the bare minimum isn't what we should expect either.
You also brought up this other ethics case that did not involve Vinnie Cervoni. It involved Jason Xandre, who acted to advance an organization while he was an officer of that organization. An ethics complaint was brought, ethics commission found against Jason Xandre, but in its opinion, the ethics commission suggested that council members undergo ethics training. So I said, with all due respect to the ethics commission, and I heard your argument and I get it, but I'm presenting the other side. Everyone on that council knew what Jason Xandre did was highly questionable, if not wrong, yet they have to undergo training and they don't need it. I mean, it's the irony of ironies to me. I talked to many of the counselors after this came out, and they, after the story was disclosed, and frankly, they were sort of horrified at, Jason's position, and they don't need ethics training. So I just don't know why this got into the ethics commission's complaint. We hadn't discussed this before, you and I, but I just wanted any thoughts on that.
I'm always learning, so I would never think I'm above a training.
Yeah.
I think I haven't heard about the ethics committee in years. And we have two, very now public issues that have gone through the ethics committee. So this is the right time to have a training. I think all counselors should have a training for ethics, especially in this environment. We've spent more money on this election than any election in the past. We need to refresh the rules and make it fresh in everyone's mind. It never hurts. I can't see it being a bad thing for anyone.
Change subject. You decided, obviously, to run for town council, and I'm wondering whether actions of the town council in the past have contributed to that decision to get involved, throw your hat in the ring, and risk winning or losing. And so, and this show's not about me, but I'll go back to when I decided to run. I was at a town council meeting, not knowing really what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to get involved. This goes all the way back, never mind. And Jason Xandre's father, Gino Xandre, was on the council at the time, and he was single-handedly debating the mayor over this, the budgetary process and excessive surpluses and stuff. And the mayor found himself in a bit of a corner, and he handed the microphone to the comptroller, and he said, "Do you know what he's talking about?" And the comptroller said, "I don't know what a surplus is." And he handed the microphone back to the mayor, and he says, "I don't know what a surplus is either." And he said, "I can't stand it. I'm going to run. I can't believe this." And all the councilors were quiet, Republicans and Democrats. They were all quiet. No one said, "Turn in your badge." No one said that. That's just to set the table for this topic. So as you look back over the council's track record over the last couple of years, or as far back as you want to go, do you give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, like, dislike, to any decisions in particular that stand out for you that may have contributed to your decision to get involved?
Well, I think, the ARPA process debacle saga is really the one that comes to mind. I mean, that's something that is going on for so long now. And as a small business owner and a resident, that was something that my business was eligible for. And I chose not to go for that just because I was so frustrated with the entire process. I mean, we start off with the mayor and a consultant doing their thing. And then all of a sudden the town council jumps in and prolongs the process, creates a committee, which then goes off. Obviously you were part of the committee, goes off and does their thing. And then we come back and we're changing the voting percentages and all this, the arithmetic. And there was a lot to be desired in that entire process. And I think it was my biggest concern was really for the other businesses that really needed the money. We had been through very hard times with COVID, and the cost of inventory is still high. Cost of labor is still high. There's still the impact. Yet the town took too long to get through that process, to get money to the businesses and charities that needed it. And that was just a disgrace in my book.
Yeah. Put you on the spot. Anything else that that you either liked or didn't like that you thought, if I was on the council, maybe I could have helped reach a better decision?
I don't want to be too negative, but I'll say another item that I really did not agree with was the approval of the armed SRO in the schools. I have my opinions on that, and I talked to Mr. Testa and Mr. Carmody as well about my concerns, and we weren't on the same page there, but they understood my concerns. My biggest issue, which probably really threw me over the edge on this, was Councillor Fishbein pointed out everything that the police chief said in response to questions from Mr. Testa was in complete conflict with the job description. And they identified that. They said, yep, that's correct. And then every councillor voted for it, even though the job description presented, which was approved, did not match what the police chief had said. And I kind of had that moment of what just happened? And it's things like that. I'm not anti-police. I don't want anybody to think that. But we can't have a team of people identifying that there's discrepancies and saying, it's okay. No, these are our children. These are our tax dollars. We need people that are going to say, this isn't okay. Come back when this squares up.
I want to turn, before we run out of time, to Democratic politics. And, we've kind of reflected in the course of our conversation so far. Democrats have struggled in the past. I think the last time they held a majority was in 2009. I don't think since then they've even had 4 on the council. They bring up issues that don't move the electorate, don't turn the results around, yet they still campaign on the same thing. They've experimented, I guess, in campaigning in different ways. There was a dalliance with a slate concept. There were dissenters from that. But as you go back into the chambers of the Democratic Town Committee, or wherever you go, and you do a debrief and you say, what can we do differently? Is it an exercise in futility? What comes out in your mind? I'm not looking for others haven't spoken and you don't speak for them. You only speak for yourself. But is it an exercise in futility for the Democrats to try to get, the mayor's office, a majority in the council, in view of the recent history and everything?
No, I think we're going to go back and look at the numbers, and I think we try something. We continue to try. We have to. Otherwise, that's why we're here. Ever the optimist. I think we came so close in 2021 on issues of the pool and the animal shelter, and we moved forward with a similar strategy, but against a different opponent. So we're going to review the numbers now with between, like we said earlier, a new mayor, 2 schools question. The voter turnout was so high. We need to see where these voters came from and what turned them out, and then reflect and adjust.
So this could be the most difficult and most theoretical of all the questions I've asked you, although we've hit it around the margins. I know your answer. I know your answer. It's okay. Do issues really matter anymore? You know, we've gone through the pool, we've gone through taxes, we've gone through infrastructure, technology, we've gone through all that. And it's not the first time. I mean, technology was an issue 15, 20 years ago, so on and so forth. Is it all personality? Is it all presentation? Is it all party affiliation? I guess my bottom line question, issues, do they really matter?
Of course they matter. They matter. But it's education on the issues and education on where your dollars go and getting people involved.
I guess I would expect nothing less. And if you watch the Citizen Mike show, and I know you do, I know you don't miss a single episode, issues are really big with me. I mean, they're just huge. And I really don't care that much about the personality, or how well they speak or anything else. Are you correct on the issues? But I get very frustrated that no one agrees with me. So so that's how that works. Hey, we have run out of time, and I want to thank you for coming on the Citizen Mike show, and good luck in whatever future aspirations you have. Public service, private, enterprise. I know you're going to be a success. You have been absolutely already. And I want to thank you viewers for watching the Citizen Mike show. I want to thank WPAA TV for broadcasting it on their channel. And Kristi Doerr, we appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.